Us. And I want to bring in Marika Girard. She's one of the journalists who filmed the infamous Bronco chase involving O.J. Simpson. She is also the mother of my colleague and friend, Katie Tour. Marika, thanks for being with us. I want to take you back to June 17th, 1994, something that was witnessed by millions of people, thanks in no small part to your efforts.
Wow, it's crazy to think that that was 30 years ago. I'll remember so clearly the spokesperson for the LAPD saying, we're expecting him to say O.J. Simpson has turned himself in, and yet he says, no, O.J. Simpson is, quote, in the wind. So, we thought, oh, my God, where could he possibly be? And we ended up in the helicopter around the area where Nicole Simpson was buried, thinking maybe he would have gone there. And lo and behold, there he was on the freeway. And within seconds, there were 15 police cars following him. And then within 10, 15 minutes, another 5 or 6 helicopters overhead. And that crazy slow-speed pursuit started. It was such an iconic moment in L.A.
It wasn't. And Marika, take us back, because there was, in hindsight now, a lot of people can know or feel they know a lot of things. But back then, at that moment, things were surprising in so many ways. I mean, this was someone who was in that Bronco and, threatening to take his own life. Take us back to what we knew back then.
Well, first of all, most people had no idea that he had any kind of a volatile relationship with his wife. He was just this heroic football player turned actor. And it was back before people knew about that. The LAPD kept it hidden that they had gone to his house numerous times. We happened to know because we had a friend in the LAPD. So for the most part, it was, oh, my God, O.J. Simpson murdered his wife, and then O.J. Simpson is in a car being pursued on the freeway. And the attitude of the public, where people were cheering him from the bridges, was just astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, and we have some pictures that as we speak to you on, that chase and those bridges and the signs over the freeways where people were stopped many times on, the other side of traffic, stopped and were taking their time to wave at O.J. Simpson. How long did this last, and how did this particular aspect or page in this, infamous history end?
Well, he was traveling along the 405 freeway and at such a slow speed that people saw it on their TV and they were able to come out and, and gawk at it. He ended up at his house on Rockingham, and the pursuit itself was probably about an hour maybe. And then when he got to Rockingham, it was at least another hour where he refused to get out of the vehicle, out of the car. And we're circling overhead. It's getting dark. I've got the camera on my shoulder trying to get a picture of him when he gets out of the car. And I'm listening to the LAPD SWAT team on the scanner, the police scanner, saying, don't worry, we've got him in our sights, because they thought he still had a gun. They didn't know what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden they say, he's getting out of the car. Don't shoot. He's got 2 picture frames in his hands. And he went into the house. They escorted him into the house. And then there was always talk that they had given him orange juice, which I thought was kind of a funny the tag to this story here is O.J. in the house, about to be taken to jail, asking for some O.J. So it was almost anticlimactic there at the end, because everybody was expecting the kind of ends that we saw in LAPD pursuits all the time, where there was a crash or something happened, but it was very anticlimactic at that point.
Yeah, and when we look back so many years ago, what happened in the trial, the outcome of that trial, then him going to prison for those 13 charges.
And that just started the rest of the media obsession with the whole O.J. trial.
Yeah.
People now are used to live, used to seeing things live. But back then, it wasn't quite as. Yeah. It wasn't the same. The media landscape wasn't the same. It was kind of the start of the everything live and 24/7 covering a story.
Yeah, can I just say
please
that
do.
it's extraordinary to listen to Marika talking, because I was in local news at the time, and that really was unlike anything any of us had ever seen before.
Yep.
First of all, let's just say how extraordinary their work was, but the commentary, the way it was described, the idea that O.J. Simpson was fleeing, that he might take his own life. It's hard to overstate what a star he was and how highly he was held in the regard of so many people. And I think in my 3 encounters with him, if you can call it that, and the first time was in a restaurant in New Orleans. He was there working. I just happened to be there. He was not just kind to anybody who came up to him, but he seemed to be inviting it. He was someone who really loved the limelight. He loved being the person who O.J. Simpson was before Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were murdered. He loved that person. And I think until the end, he was trying to fight to get that reputation back, which was never going to be reclaimed after the trial. And much of people's original impressions were formed as they were watching that Bronco chase about O.J. Simpson, and then watching the trial go on and on. But that's the reason why I think when I did a program on whether or not he should have custody of his kids, when he called me, it was clear. And I should just also say, I think I was in my first month at MSNBC. I wasn't a known quantity in national news by any stretch of the imagination. And he called me because it was eating at him. And I could tell from our private conversation and then later on the air, it was eating at him that people thought he was an unfit parent. And he said, and I remember this quote, "To commit murder is an unfit thing. I'm innocent. I didn't do it." And so for O.J. Simpson, the rest of his life, after the moment, I think even after the acquittal, knowing that people didn't believe that he deserved to be acquitted was something he lived with for the rest of his life. And then ultimately, of course, went to prison for a crime that for many people, they looked at it as some small measure of perhaps amends that they didn't get from the first trial.
Yeah, it's really remarkable to kind of in 2024 think back on how the reality was for many in 1994. And Marika, I mean, you know, I remember I was at the time on that June 17th, 1994, working at WTVJ, NBC6. At the time it was NBC, it was 4. But we carried the different, you know, live shots from the helicopters. You know, you were doing your job that day, but we carried that slow chase as if it were a local story for us in South Florida. Just the impact of Marika. When you look back, what do you think you remember the most about him?
Just the idea that someone can fall so far from grace so quickly. That he was just such an iconic figure in the community. And he lived not far from where I lived. And he was just part of the scene, part of the star-studded scene of Brentwood in Los Angeles. And then, you know, to be, who would have ever thought that could happen? And for me, it was, I'm in the helicopter and I'm thinking, part of my career is covering things that happen to stars, and usually it's openings and things like that, you know, premieres. And suddenly, and the other half is doing crime and pursuits. And here it is, both these parts of my career are together in this one moment where a superstar is in a chase on the freeway. What an LA story. What a strange thing to happen.
What a strange thing indeed. And it was just the beginning of so many more strange things that occurred around O.J. Simpson. Chris Dancing, you know, just thinking about the interview that you had with him and the fact that he would call you because he wanted to speak out about this. I remember seeing him. He lived some years in South Florida. I think it may have been 2000 or 2001. And I was just at a restaurant, just like Chris, you were talking about you know, the moment you bumped into him, and he came in, and yet he was indeed treated by many as a celebrity, and he clearly looked forward to the interactions with people at that restaurant who he very much, it seemed, wanted to.
There's a certain level of celebrity that never goes away, right? And the young O.J. Simpson was very handsome. He was extremely charming. His charisma was extraordinary. And I think because so many people had seen him, he wasn't just, and I don't mean this in that way because he was a great football player, but he wasn't just a football player. Then he had the other part of his celebrity, which was on television and in movies. His commercials were ubiquitous. Everywhere you look, there seemed to be O.J. Simpson commentating then on NFL games. He was someone who really crossed gender lines, crossed racial lines, crossed age lines. He was simply O.J. And that person was hard and perhaps impossible for him to give up because there were reports later about how he had places that he would go for exactly the reason you talked about, which is, Jose, places where he knew that he would find a friendly crowd, places where he would still get reinforcements, places where he could perhaps for a moment forget that he was a pariah throughout much of America and arguably much of the world.
Indeed. And Chris, stay with us, but I want to thank Marika Girard, who really was one of the people that filmed history in the making in so many ways. Thank you, Marika, for being with us, and always my love for Katy Tur, who we admire and work with so closely.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.